Welcome to the More Than Fitness podcast.
Hello, podcast listeners, and welcome back to Minisode number 40 on the More Than Fitness podcast. And first off, I'm recording this on Memorial Day, so I hope whenever you're listening to this, you had a lovely Memorial Day or whenever it is that you're listening to this. I'm excited because tomorrow your boy is getting a haircut. It's been long overdue, and I could not be more excited. But the exciting part is I'm shaving it basically completely off. I'm getting a nice little, not necessarily, it's like a buzz cut and a fade, something like that. But I need it badly, and I'm trying to switch something up. I've been watching Prison Break with my girlfriend a lot recently, and the two brothers in there, they have some buzz cuts. They look like badasses, and I used to have a buzz cut back in the day, but I'm thinking it's time to bring it back. And so, first off, I'm excited about that. Second, I'm excited about today's Minisode topic, which is 6 stupid gym mistakes. Right. And seeing as how a lot of the gyms and things are opening up now because of quarantine being lightened in many different areas. And also depending on when you're listening to this, maybe gyms are open everywhere. Right. But for those who are listening to it up to date, right, we're going to be getting back in the gym, and we're going to be so excited to get gung-ho with everything back into old training plans or back into, just trying to get back to where we used to be. And that can result in a lot of soreness, a lot of pain, and possibly injury. But I've talked about that in another minisode on how to ease back into training, but this is actually one that if you have been training for a while or you're about to train, no matter when you are training, you need to avoid these 6 stupid gym mistakes. All right, and the first one is the one that I see typically from people who are newer into lifting, or if they train with a training partner, right? So they have a competition basically with their training partner. They try and beat each other all the time. And I think that's healthy. I think a certain degree of that's what makes training partners better than training by yourself, right? Is that friendly competition you have between each other. However, what that doesn't make for is good long-term progress and minimizing injury risk, right? And so the first stupid gym mistake to avoid is trying to max out every single week. Even honestly, every 2 weeks or every month is going to be, if you're trying to max out on a lift, well, first off, if you're trying to gain muscle mass and like your priorities are more gain muscle, lose body fat, you don't ever need to do a 1 rep max. That's what I'm referring to here. You never need to do a 1 rep max to test your strength on bench press or deadlift or squat or something like that. Of course you can, however, it is by no means required whatsoever. And in my opinion, if your goals are solely to build muscle and to lose fat, I would avoid maxing out actually, just because the injury risk is so high. And the majority of people who are maxing out every week are doing it solely for their own ego, or to try and impress other people around them, and it's just not beneficial in any way. So you're increasing your injury risk, and you are also especially like a max out on the deadlift or something, like you're going to be wrecked for at least several days after that, right? Your fatigue is going to be astronomical. And that's something that I want to talk about actually in the second stupid gym mistake. So the first one, trying to max out every week or every 4 weeks or maxing out at all whenever you're trying to gain muscle mass is probably not ideal. I would say instead, a better alternative would be to try and do like a 5 rep max or something like that, like a 5 to 8 rep max on a certain lift and seeing what you can get there. And then over time, trying to beat that 5 rep max over time. That would be your injury risk is going to be much lower than doing a 1 rep max, right? But this brings me to the second gym mistake, and it's going to be going to failure way too often. because of people like CT Fletcher and the other, I used to be a big Animal Pack fan, and I still am. I'm still an Animal Pack fan. I think that their brand is cool. They represent, people who are hardcore or whatever, right? Like that. I think that's very appealing, and it was very appealing to me at a younger age. It's something that I resonated with. I thought that I was unique and different because of how much I cared about the gym, and Animal Pack and CT Fletcher, their brand is tailored towards that. And so this phenomena of wanting to go to failure more often, it's still your motherfucking set. That's what CT Fletcher always says. And I love CT Fletcher, by the way. I think he's a great human being. I just think that his methodology could be slightly improved. But the problem with going to failure way too often is similar to the trying to max out all the time, and it comes down to injury risk. And you guys will hear me talk about injury risk all the time, but it's because, at least, as a personal trainer and somebody who cares about lifting as long as they possibly can in life, and without, big spurs of trying to heal up, right? Injury prevention is rule number one, because if you're hurt, you can't lift, right? So any other argument about why injury risk shouldn't be your number one priority, kind of goes out the window. So going to failure way too often, what that does is whenever you go to failure, and what I mean by going to failure, for those who need clarification, is just simply if your first exercise is the bench press or something, and then you make sure that you go to failure. Sometimes what people typically do is they pyramid up in weight, and then they end up, again, they try to max out, or they try and get their like biggest 3-rep max or something. And that's like, if they do bench press once a week, that's what they try and do. They build up, they do like a pyramid setup, and then they try and go to failure. They try to max out, or some variation of that. But going to failure too often increases your injury risk, and then also your fatigue builds up much more quickly. And that's the main one that I want to focus on with this, because you're not lifting, I think I've mentioned this before, but you're not lifting in a day to only grow the most amount of muscle in that one day, right? You're lifting in a day so that you can gain the most muscle mass over subsequent days. So over an entire week long time, like a weekly period, right? Or a monthly period, right? Like you want to, because if you go all out on Monday, that's going to affect Tuesday and Wednesday's workout, because you're still trying to recover from Monday. So if you're going at a 10 out of 10 on Monday, you're only going to be able to go, you're going to be forced to go at like a 5 or 6 on Tuesday and Wednesday. Or if you're able to plow through and do an 8 or 9 on Tuesday and Wednesday, then Thursday and Friday, you're more susceptible to getting injured or having your performance decrease, because you're trying to go so hard, then you end up burning out. And it's not a smart way to train. You need to think about, okay, how can I maximize my performance throughout the entire week of training, not just in a singular day. And that's why going all out and going to failure exercise after exercise within a single training session isn't smart, because you're being selfish with that performance, right? You feel really good on Monday, so you're going ham on Monday, but then on Tuesday and Wednesday you feel shitty and your performance is affected then, right? If you're only lifting twice a week, of course, this is where going to failure makes more sense, right? Because you have 5 other days of the week to rest and recover. But if you're trying to lift 4 to 5 times a week, you're going to have to limit how often you go to failure so that you can make each training session as effective as possible. So yeah, I think that's also important. And then also to within a singular session, going to failure on the first exercise, let's say bench press, right? You go to failure on those first couple sets, and then on subsequent exercises. So you still have dumbbell, or let's say you still have incline dumbbell bench, you still have machine press, you still have flies and everything. All of those exercises, after you already go to failure in the very first exercise, are going to be affected. So that's something that you need to think about as well. It's like, not only do you need to think about your performance over an entire week, but also your performance over that one session. So blowing your load in the very beginning of your workout is going to affect the middle and the end of the workout as well. So that's something you need to think about too. This is why you need to go at usually about 1 to 2 reps shy of failure on most exercises until you maybe get to the end and you do some isolation exercises or something like that. That's whenever you can go to failure on cable flies, because it's the end of your workout. You're trying to finish off maybe your chest workout or something like that, and it's not going to drastically make you fatigued or improve your risk of getting injured, right? So you can go to failure. You just need to be strategic about it. Okay, let's see. Yeah, I'm gonna rush through these. I've got a little bit wordy here, but those are the 2 ones that are a little bit more technical. But number 3 is basing your workouts off your feelings. Now, this is again, you need to think about, what am I trying to accomplish over this entire week of training, right? And this is why going hard in one workout can affect other workouts. I'm trying to think. Let's see, basing your workouts off your feelings. Yeah, and also maybe if you're feeling tired or something like that, and you could actually do more than you're giving yourself credit for, but you're like, oh no, I'm really tired, I'm whatever. Like, there's a time to auto-regulate and make sure you're not pushing it too hard day after day after day. But other times, don't be a pussy and just get your workout in, right? And I think what I mean here by this one is basing your workouts off your feelings is, I only work out hard whenever I feel like it, right? This is where having a training plan and a structure in place so that you can try and follow it the best that you can, and then tweaking it as you go on. But working out only whenever you're motivated or something like that is, you're not typically going to get the results that you're looking for, because you're only doing it off of short-term motivation and feelings. So fuck your feelings. All right. And number 4 is thinking the pump and burn are most important for muscle growth. Okay. Think that one through for a second. I'm getting a little sippy sip. Mouth is getting dry. Okay. Thinking the pump and burn are most important for muscle growth. I'll try and keep this one quick. The research simply does not support this, right? So there's supposedly, and I say supposedly because it's still there's still some controversy around it, but there's 3 different mechanisms for hypertrophy. So it's mechanical tension, it's metabolic stress, and it's muscular damage, right? Those are the 3 supposed mechanisms for muscle hypertrophy in your body. The pump and the burn are going to fall under metabolic stress. And researchers have taken a look at things, and it seems like this one just does not have the same effect as, say, mechanical tension does. Because here's the thing, you can get down right now and bust out push-ups, and then you're going to end up getting a pump in your chest, right? But that doesn't mean that your chest is growing, because there's going to be a certain threshold that your chest muscles are going to need. I'm simplifying this, by the way. There's going to be a certain threshold that your muscle fibers in your chest need to reach until they're forced to grow, right? So this is where progressive overload, this is where you need things like mechanical tension, getting stronger over time, right? Doing more work over time. That's what forces your muscles to adapt and grow. But getting down and doing a set of push-ups and getting a pump and feeling the burn in your chest, sure, that can help you get to the threshold that you need to grow muscle. But you're going to have to bust out, depending, of course, this depends on the individual, but for most of you, you're going to have to do a lot of push-ups in order to see some growth and to force your chest to grow. And so what I'm getting at here is going in and doing, this is why it kills me whenever I see really skinny guys or younger guys or something, and it's typically just pure ignorance, doing things like pec deck or just lots of isolation movements that I know they probably feel a lot, or like doing forearm curls or something, because you can feel it. You feel the blood rushing to the muscles. It feels, or girls on the stair stepper or something, you see them kick back their glutes, or this is why you see the cardio workout, like the circuit training and things. Those things burn, right? They burn a lot, and it feels like we're progressing. But our muscles are like, no, dude, that's not enough overload for us, right? And that's what I'm kind of getting at here. The pump and the burn, they feel like they're working. However, the research has been pretty clear that it's not enough stimulus to force an adaptation, right? So I think it's more of the icing on the cake as opposed to the cake itself. The cake itself is doing the main compound lifts and getting stronger on them over time. Period. That's basically it. So when I say getting stronger over time, I mean in like the 6 to 12 rep range. Again, not maxing out here, 6 to 12 rep range, getting stronger, not worrying too much about the pump and the burn. The pump and the burn, you can worry about that towards the end of the workout. And I think, again, it's not that it doesn't have any effect at all. It's just not the most effective and efficient use of our time. Okay. Number 5 is going to be, oh yeah, we are on 16 minutes. Okay. Number 5, switching it up way too often. I'm keeping these quick. Switching it up way too often, what happens is whenever you have too much variety, you cannot measure your progress, right? If you constantly switch up your workouts, you don't know how you're progressing week to week or month to month, right? If you're constantly switching up exercises and things like that, all you're doing is, sure, you may get sore and things because you're doing different exercises, right? But again, that doesn't necessarily mean that you are growing muscle. And so switching it up too often or thinking that you need to shock your body or things like that, it doesn't work like that. What I would recommend instead is picking two or three, I would say, 1 to 2 main lifts for each body part, sticking with those for a 8, 12-week period, sticking with those, trying to get better at those movements. And if you want to get more variety in your workouts, do it in your accessory exercises for the day. So instead of dumbbell flies, you want to do cable flies, right? Something like that. Switch up those accessory isolation exercises as opposed to your main lifts. Work on the main lift like it's a skill, and you want to get better at that skill over time. So you need to stay consistent with it enough so that you can see some actual growth. Okay, and lastly, number 6 is sacrificing form for weight. This goes back to injury prevention and also muscle growth, right? Because whenever you start to bicep curls is the typical example of this, right? You start to heave the weight up, and instead of still placing that tension and weight on your biceps, instead what happens is you start to put the emphasis on your low back and then your shoulders, right? And you have muscles surrounding that area that end up taking over, and then the tension is placed on the surrounding muscles as opposed to the muscle that you're trying to target. And then that defeats the purpose of what you're trying to do in the first place. That's just a shitty way of stimulating your biceps and your other surrounding muscles, and also increasing your risk of injury. So it's just there's whenever your goal is muscle growth and fat loss, like, there's no reason you should not be using a full range of motion and trying to keep the best possible form that you can, because the overall load doesn't. What matter? It's relative, right? So I don't give a fuck how much you can lift, right? Your body only knows, okay, is it forcing me to adapt? Like I mentioned earlier, is the stimulus sufficient over time? And you can do that without increasing your risk of injury. And also shortening the range of motion has been shown not to be as beneficial to muscle growth as it is for a fully lengthened and a fully shortened muscle. So whenever you're doing like half rep curls or whatever, but you're using a heavier weight, you're not actually stimulating your biceps more. You're just increasing your risk of injury, and you look like a douchebag. So yes, don't sacrifice form for weight. All right, real quick recap. Number 1, trying to max out every week. Number 2, going to failure way too often. Number 3, basing your workouts off your feelings. Number 4, thinking the pump and burn are most important for muscle growth. Number 5, switching it up way too often. Number 6, sacrificing form for weight. And that, my friends, is 6 stupid gym mistakes you should avoid. Okay, thank you as always for listening and for watching. See ya.